Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Wednesday, July 19th meeting of the Lake Havasu City Planning and Zoning Commission. Would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Jim Harris.
Here.
Matthew Mitchell.
Here.
Gabrielle Medley.
Here.
David Diaz.
Here.
Susanna Ballard.
Here.
Joan DeZuro.
Here.
Paul Lair.
Here.
Tiffany Wilson. Lonnie Stevenson.
Here.
JP Thornton.
Mr. Stevenson, would you please come and fill Miss Tiffany or Miss Wilson's spot, please, for today? Okay, minutes of the last meeting. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections, commissioners, for the minutes of the last meeting? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meetings from the last meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I have a second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Diaz, second by Ms. Ballard to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and call for the question. And there we go.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Correspondence and announcements, Mr. Morris.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you very much. Update at the previous City Council action. They approved the general plan text amendment. It was dealing with timing for major amendments. So they approved both the general plan update, text update, and the development code update. Also, congratulations to Susanna Ballard. She was reappointed as a regular member of the Planning Commission. And also congratulations to JP Thornton. He was appointed as an alternate member to the commission. So just want to thank them and thank all the commission members for your service. It's a valuable service you provide, and I want to thank you again for that. That concludes staff's presentation, although the Development Services Director, Jeff Tuneman, does have an announcement to make. So,
Mr. Tuneman.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. You might see a new face up here on the dais this morning. I'd like to introduce Chris Gilbert. He is a newest member of the Development Services team. He is going to be our new Planning Division Manager. As you all know, Luke Morris is retiring at the end of September. So we are fortunate enough that Chris is coming to us from the city of Raytown in Missouri. He's been with them for 9 years, population of about, or 5 years, excuse me, population of about 30,000. He was the one and only in the planning department in Raytown. But he comes to us with a lot of knowledge in the profession of the planning area. And we're very excited to have him. We're super excited to have some cross training with Luke Morris, our current planning division manager. So I'd just like to introduce Chris, and you'll be seeing him a lot lately from now on. And with that said, I'll turn it back over to Luke. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tuneman. And welcome, Chris.
well, that concludes staff's announcements.
That's it, huh? Okay. Well, all right. Let me start by saying that this is a public hearing and there is a structured order to this proceeding. City staff will present each item. There will be time for the commission to ask questions of the staff, and then the applicant will have the opportunity to present their case to the commission. That being done, we will then open the proceeding to the public for their questions and input. I would ask that anyone of the public that wishes to speak limit their trips to the podium and microphone to one only, keep all comments to less than 3 minutes, and to stay on point and not discuss subject matter that is not pertinent to the decision being considered here today. After public testimony is taken, I will then close the public hearing and bring the motion back to the table for city staff's recommendation, discussion amongst the commission, and eventually a motion to approve or disapprove. The first item on today's agenda is ID 23-3876. This is a request for a planned development rezone for 115 Park Avenue, Assessor's parcel number 107-78001, from limited commercial C1 district to limited commercial planned development C1 PD, allowing a maximum building height increase from 25 feet to 30 feet and allowing multiple family residential use. Mr. Morris, your presentation, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you very much. The subject property is located on the east side of Park Avenue, north of Mulberry Avenue, near the Aquatic Center. It's currently vacant and undeveloped. It measures about 1.25 acres, and there's a 50-foot utility easement at the rear. The property and the properties to the east across the highway and to the north and south are zoned C1 limited commercial and are a mix of vacant land and developed commercial uses. The properties to the west across Park Avenue are zoned Island Body Beach with a condominium and apartment complex in the permitting process and a hotel that's been constructed. Here's the site plan for the property. A similar request was previously reviewed by the Planning Commission at your April 5th meeting, and the City Council reviewed it at their May 9th meeting. The council had concerns over the vehicle circulation and parking for the restaurant drive-through use and did not approve the request for the rezone. They asked that the applicant revise and resubmit the plan. So request is the revised plan. What they did, they moved the proposed building, the retail building here was more toward the north. They slid it to the south, and then they allowed a travel aisle to come through here. So the applicant's letter of intent and general development plan, again, show the two buildings as before. One is a 2,600 square foot restaurant drive-through. And then the other building, second, is a mixed-use building with about 6,300 square foot of commercial uses on the ground floor. And then the upper floor the upper 2 stories are 24 apartment buildings. On the second and third floor, there will be 12 apartment buildings on each floor. There will be reserved parking for the apartments, with the remaining lot used for the commercial and drive-through uses. The lot will be landscaped and designed to meet all the city standards. The building elevations are shown here. The C1 zoning district allows building height up to 25 feet. The drive-through building will be well under the 25-foot height limit. However, the mixed-use building is proposed for 30 feet in height when measured from the zero for the lot. So this is 5 feet higher than a 25-foot that's allowed in the C1 district. Therefore, the applicant is asking for an exception to allow a 30-foot building height. The mixed-use building will also be home again to 24 multiple-family 2-bedroom apartments consisting of 12 units on each the second and third stories. A multiple-family residential is not allowed in the C1 zoning district. Therefore, the applicant is asking for an exception to allow the use through this PD plan development process. The building elevations indicate a 3-story building with varied parapet roof heights. Multiple commercial uses and covered parking are on the ground floor, and residential units on the second and third floors. Some of the residential units are shown with balconies, and the building exterior is a mix of white, gray, and tan exterior with a number of alcoves and recesses to break up any long expanses. The multiple family use will be similar in appearance to a hotel, which is allowed in the C1 zoning district. Staff does not anticipate the multiple family use having any major impacts on the neighborhood. As far as parking, the parking for the project is shown on this table. The applicant is making use of some parking alternatives that are allowed in the development code to reduce the required parking from 88 to 70 spaces. They've done this through the shared parking allowance, which provides a reduction factor for the combined restaurant and residential uses, resulting in a reduction of 6 spaces for that. And then the bicycle facility reduction allows 12 bicycle spaces in lieu of 12 vehicle parking spaces, resulting again in a reduction of 12 parking spaces. So a total of 18 spaces are removed through the parking allowances, and this results in 8 and 70 spaces required. The plan shows 70 spaces required. The plan shows 71 spaces, and so the proposed number and type of parking spaces does meet the development standards, and no parking exceptions are requested as part of this request. There is an issue. I mentioned the rear 50 feet of the property is a utility easement. There's a vehicle travel aisle at the rear of the property here shown in blue. Unisource Electric has expressed concerns about the easternmost of that 25-foot, 50-foot easement, this 25-foot portion shown in blue. A vehicle travel aisle is located within this area to access these parking spaces. Unisource is asking that this portion of the easement be left completely open, allowing only landscaping gravel at most. However, per our development code, vehicle travel aisles are to be improved with asphalt or concrete surfaces or an alternative paving material as approved by the zoning administrator. The developer is proposing compacted decomposed granite as a paving material, which is not among the options available, approvable by the plan division manager. Therefore, a condition to allow compacted decomposed granite paving in this area is included for consideration. Given the situation, staff is comfortable with the proposed alternative parking or paving. The owner would prefer standard paving and is working with Unisource to explore potential options to allow standard paving for this area. As far as the rest of the development standards, landscaping, the 10-foot landscape buffer is required along Park Avenue, and landscaping strips are shown throughout the property. However, full review of the number of trees, shrubs, decorative rock ground cover, as well as the overall percentages of landscaping shall be required prior to development. No landscaping exceptions are requested. Some signage is shown on the plan, but is not being, again, reviewed as part of this application. All signage is subject to the development code and will be reviewed separately as sign permits are submitted. No sign exceptions are requested. The applicant has provided some renderings. I'll scroll through those as I read. Staff supports this request with the following conditions. The development shall substantially match the general development plan submitted with the request. The developer shall coordinate with the Public Works Department and Unisource Electric concerning development within the rear 50-foot utility easement. And upon acceptance by the Public Works Department and Unisource Electric, compacted decomposed granite paving is allowed as an alternative vehicle travel aisle material within the easternmost 25-foot of the 50-foot utility easement. And finally, the developer shall coordinate with ADOT and the City Public Works Department during the development permitting process to address drainage and traffic impacts on the Highway 95 corridor. And as a reminder, of course, building permits and design review and compliance with all the development codes and building codes will be required, including any off-site improvements such as street paving, curb, gutter, sidewalks, traffic that will be required prior to development of the property. So that concludes staff's presentation. Open any questions you may have. And the applicant is also here. Thank you.
Mr. Morris, I would like you to briefly recap the differences between this submittal and the previous submittal. Just highlight the major issues.
All right. Thank you. One of the changes is the building itself, the multiple mixed-use building, has been shifted to the south, and the parking in the rear is now at a higher elevation, so as not to disturb that rear 50-foot easement. So the rear parking at this point is up almost level with the second floor of the building. So from Highway 95 area looking toward it, it'll look like a two-story building. And so there'll be the potential here for a walkover from that rear parking for the apartment parking. This is all reserved for the apartments in the back. Walk over to the second floor of the apartments, or the first floor of the two stories of apartment. That's one change. Well, that's really the major change. And also changing the location of the proposed drive-through. Before it was down here to the south. They've moved it to the north side and provided almost, I think, 17 or 18 queuing spaces for vehicles. So moving this moving the restaurant drive-through building north and moving the other building, the mixed-use building, toward the south a little bit are the major changes.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of staff and their presentation by commissioners? Anybody at all? Ms. Zero? Okay. Mr. Diaz?
The client and so forth. So just want to clarify, the drive-through now, is that Park Avenue where it's going to be coming off of? The drive-through will be entered on Park Avenue?
Correct. The entrance and the exit will be off Park Avenue.
Okay.
So Park Avenue is on this side, the left side of this slide, and then Highway 95 is to the right quite a little ways. There's 200 feet of right-of-way for Highway 95. So
Yeah, it makes much more sense. Before you would have had to pay the cash or your passenger window, so that works. The Keller Williams building that is right there, you know what the height of that building is? That new Keller Williams Realtor building?
You know, I'm not sure what that is. I think it's in the 30 or, it must be 25 feet because that's what the maximum height for the
Yeah.
C1 is.
It could
So they've
be-
dug down.
it could be
to go
taller, though, right?
So they're doing what's similar to this project. Because of that Park Avenue, the lot slopes up from Park Avenue.
Yeah.
So that zero for measuring the height is up that slope a little ways. So that 25 feet could be measured from 5 or 10 feet above the street, depending upon where the zero is established for that lot. And that's similar to what's going to happen.
And I
in this
think that
case.
is the case.
Yeah. And just two more questions, Chair. That DG, I see the reasoning for that because they need to get to that utility if something happens. I just think it's going to get tore up with traffic and if it rains. And so I hope they're going to maintain that on a normal basis. So and they continue to work with, you said they're working with Unisource on that because that's going to get a mess with cars driving in and out of there. I've used that stuff before. That's just a fact. The parking for the residences, is it only dedicated? Like, are they going to have like assigned spots? Like the resident has to park there. No one else can park in a residential spot.
You know, I'll have to let the applicant address that, but there is, the rear area is gated off. So where the access is to the multiple family, there's an access gate on the south side of the building and an access gate on the north. And everything behind those access gates satisfies all the parking requirements for the multiple family.
Okay, thank
without
you.
any reductions.
Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Mr. Wilson? Excuse me, Mr. Stevens?
We're going to get it by the end of the year, Jim.
No,
That
we
is
won't.
going to be our goal for you this year. Stevenson. Luke, revisit the parking for me. When we go back to the parking chart, we had made adjustments on the required parking for the restaurant from 26.7 required down to 18, and on the retail, 21 required spots down to 13. I guess what was how are we substantiating those reductions? Because it just seems like we're cramming a bunch in this spot.
Well, thank you for the question. The development code does allow in certain situations, reductions to parking requirements for multiple family, for mixed use and commercial type development. One of those mechanisms is shared parking. So you have two different uses and then you combine the total required parking for those two uses and then divide it by a factor. In this case, it's 1.1. So it's basically kind of a 10% reduction for those two uses combined and use the highest two uses. So in this case, we would add up the two-bedroom residential units, how many of those parking spaces are required, and then add the restaurant drive-through because that's the next highest required number of parking spaces. Add those together and then apply that reduction factor. And that gave them six reduced parking spaces, so 6 fewer parking spaces. So that's 6 of the 18. The other 12 of the 18 is from the bicycle parking. In lieu of providing a parking space, you can provide bicycle parking spaces with certain design standards applied, and then you can switch those out for a one-to-one basis. There's a minimum threshold. You have to have a minimum number of required spaces to use the bicycle parking, and there's a maximum number of bicycle parking spaces you can switch for. So they use that to provide 12 additional reduction of 12 parking spaces by providing 12 bicycle parking spaces. And all those design standards will be reviewed during design review and make sure they're in compliance with everything that's required. So those are the two mechanisms they choose. There are other mechanisms in our development code that someone could also look at, but they're all part of the code. Anyone can use them. They don't have to go through any exception PD process to use them. So they're using those, and they're mechanisms that are in place for the development code already.
I guess I'm concerned. The parking for the residents is going to be gated off, so we've got covered there. But when you go back to the retail, 13 spots, and it's really in front of the retail building where you have those designated. If you've got 3 retail locations with an employee or 2 there working, so that's going to be 6 parking places. So that's going to leave now 7 for customers unless they overflow into the restaurant. And then the second part of that is on the restaurant and the drive-through. We're not even thinking, we're using little cars for our template, but what about any oversized vehicles? Because this is going to be down in an area where people are probably going to be pulling trailers and other items, and it just seems like it's not going to fit.
Well, in FMA, the parking table here, those numbers required and provided, that's just staff putting how many were provided for each type of use. The number provided will be at least 21 parking spaces for the restaurant and retail together. 31 spaces, I'm sorry, for the restaurant and retail together. So we just kind of use them and kind of use the same reduction for the percentage reduction for each of those types of uses. So this doesn't necessarily say there will be 18 spaces reserved for a restaurant and 13 for retail. There'll be 31 spaces for however the developer or the tenants or the developer figures they'll be shared parking or not shared or reserved. So that'll be up to the developer how they utilize those 31 parking spaces, if they reserve them for specific uses or not.
And then my last question is just clarifying, these apartments are rental apartments. This isn't going to be another version of hotel like across the street. This is going to be for actual residents.
That's my understanding. Of course, the applicant is here. They can help answer any more detailed questions. But yes, that's my understanding.
Any other questions of staff by commissioners? Is the applicant present? Would you like to come forward and make a presentation or answer questions? Are we going to have questions of the applicant? Okay, then we'll bypass you. All right, this is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this item, either pro or con, now's time to do so. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the table for staff's recommendations.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you very much. Based on the findings, the Development Review Committee recommends that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for Land Use Action 23-3876 for a planned development rezone for 115 Park Avenue, assessor parcel number 107-78-001 from limited commercial C1 to limited commercial planned development C1/PD, allowing a maximum building height increase from 25 feet to 30 feet and allowing multiple family residential use with the following conditions. 1, this development shall substantially match the general development plan submitted with the request. 2, the developer shall coordinate with the City Public Works Department and Unisource Electric concerning development within the 50-foot rear public utility easement. 3, upon acceptance by the City Public Works Department and Unisource Electric, compacted decomposed granite paving is allowed as an alternate vehicle travel aisle paving material within the easternmost 25 feet of the 50-foot public utility easement. And 4, the developer shall coordinate with ADOT and the City Public Works Department during the development permitting process to address drainage and traffic impacts on the Highway 95 corridor. And as a reminder, this item will go to the City Council's August 8th meeting with the Commission's recommendation. Thank you.
All right, we are at the table for discussion and or a motion. Ms. Ballard?
A motion? Thank you. I move to recommend the City Council approve land use number 23-3876 for a planned development rezone for 115 Park Avenue, APN 107-78-001 from limited commercial C1 district to limited commercial plan development C1/PD, allowing a maximum building height increase from 25 feet to 30 feet and allowing multiple family residential use with the following conditions. The development shall substantially match the general development plan submitted with the request. Number 2, the developer shall coordinate with the City Public Works Department and Unisource Electric concerning development with the rear 50-foot public utility easement. Number 3, upon acceptance by the City Public Works Department and Unisource Electric, compacted decomposed granite paving is allowed as an alternate vehicle travel aisle paving material within the easternmost 25 feet of the 50-foot public utility easement. And 4, the developer shall coordinate with ADOT and the City Public Works Department during the development permitting process to address drainage and traffic impacts on the Highway 95 corridor.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Ballard, a second by Ms. Zuro, to approve ID 23-3876 with staff's recommendations. Any further discussion on the motion? Anybody? All right, let's call for the question.
Motion passes 6-1.
All right. Congratulations and good luck. The next item on today's agenda is the call to the public. This is the portion where anybody can speak to the commission about any subject. Is there anybody that would like to address the commission? Seeing none, future meetings, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you again. The next regular scheduled meeting is August 2nd, and we do have items for them. So we will see you on August 2nd. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We stand adjourned.